What is it? Yeah, I'm a trained professional. Hello world, my name is Matt Spa, and I'm a video producer and photographer in Atlanta, Georgia. I shoot a lot of interviews, and I find myself relaying the same information over and over to my interview subjects, usually just before or sometimes even during the interview process, which isn't ideal in terms of timing. So I'm making this video to share that information in hopes that, number one, I won't have to keep saying the same things over and over, and two, to help interviewees relax and be more confident by having an understanding of the interview process. The general principles that I'm going to share should be helpful to anyone, but the specifics will not apply to every situation. They will, of course, apply if you're working with me on whatever video project you have lined up. Most interview videos have the person being interviewed, of course, someone who is asking them questions, and some sort of production crew. The crew can be a single person, but often there will be a camera operator, someone handling the lighting, someone monitoring audio, maybe a director or a project manager, and if you're lucky, a person or persons handling hair and makeup. So when you show up, there may be a lot more people and a lot more stuff than you might expect, which brings me to my first point, preparation. Being rested, hydrated, and a few minutes early will all serve you very well. A good night's sleep will do wonders for your cognitive ability. Staying hydrated, especially the day before, can do wonders for your appearance. But bear in mind, you need to strike a balance between the two. Don't hydrate to the point that you end up repeatedly interrupting the good sleep, if you know what I mean. Being early will allow you to settle in and give you margin for traffic or other unforeseen issues. If you're supposed to start at 9 a.m., coming in at 5 till is not in your best interest, especially if you will have hair and makeup professionals at the shoot. Which brings me to point number 2, which is your appearance. If you will have hair and makeup professionals on set, you should arrive made up as you normally would for work or a social event. But when in doubt, less is more. And that of course also applies to situations where you're expected to do your own hair and makeup. Less is more. In general, because of the higher light levels used for video, the biggest concern is reducing shine. So powder is your friend, and if you choose to wear lipstick, matte or flat finishes are usually preferable. Gentlemen can often benefit from a dry paper towel over the face or a little transparent powder to knock the shine off, and a light dusting of hairspray can tame the wayward locks on your head or chin if you have them. My goal with hair and makeup is to create a look that is flattering, but more importantly to avoid anything that might be distracting. The focus needs to be on the information that you're providing, and anything that interferes with that is working against the goal. What do you wear? I always tell people, wear something that you think looks nice on you, which usually means wearing something that fits properly. I know that fashion dictates fit to some degree, but fashions change, sometimes very quickly, and video lasts a long time. So I suggest avoiding extremely tight or extremely loose-fitting clothing. In terms of colors and patterns, consider the content of your interview. A funeral home employee in a black suit makes perfect sense, but if you're talking about spring flower arrangements, something brighter and more festive is going to be more appropriate. Things you want to avoid are bright colors and really bold patterns. You need to be yourself, but again, we're trying to avoid distraction. We want to call attention to your face, particularly the eyes, and the content of your interview. One last thing on color, I always tell people to avoid flesh tones in their clothing. Flesh-toned clothes can make it hard to color balance a shot, but they can also make everything look too homogeneous for my tastes. That's kind of subjective and may sound silly coming from a guy in a gray shirt on a gray background, but I still feel like it's worth mentioning. With regard to jewelry, again, avoid pieces that would create distraction. Sparkly can be kind of cool, but enormous is usually not. You're likely going to be sitting down for your interview, so consider how your attire will look when you're in a sitting position. Which brings me to point number 3, which is the process. You've showed up on time. You're rested and hydrated and powdered to perfection, and you're looking good in your well-fitting outfit, so what's next? Usually, by the time you arrive, the camera angles have already been set, and the audio and lighting equipment is basically in place. In this wide shot, you can see all the stuff that's being used to make this relatively simple shot. I have a large main light, I have a reflector off to the side, there's a lamp in the background and a side light and some small light filling in at the top of the frame. For this setup, I have a microphone right here that's just out of the shot. And you may have something like that, or you may have a small lavalier mic that's clipped to your clothing or maybe hidden under your collar. Sometimes those can even be put on the skin with a small bit of adhesive. It's all hypoallergenic, it's cool, don't worry. And lastly, I have these two cameras pointed at me. The primary is a medium shot, and my secondary camera is on a slider that's moving back and forth. As I said before, things will be basically in place, but once you arrive, it all needs to be adjusted to best suit you. This can take anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes or sometimes more depending on the location, but none of that is your concern. You don't need to feel any pressure during that time. Use it to get relaxed in your surroundings. If I can, I will often use this time to talk to my subject. And this isn't idle chit-chat to pass the time or fool somebody into relaxing. Because I edit most of the footage I shoot, that additional interaction can often give some insight that can make the final edit that much better. Once everything is set, you'll be facing an interviewer, and that's where your attention needs to rest. You don't need to look at the cameras. It's actually bad if you do. Keep your focus on the person that's asking the questions and just have a conversation. You may or may not get your questions in advance, and there's no real right or wrong on that. It depends on the subject matter. If you need to deliver a bunch of facts and figures, you're probably going to get them in advance. If you're speaking about a personal experience or relaying an account of some specific incident, you'll probably get a general idea of what you're going to be asked, but you're not going to get the exact questions. There are two things to remember about the interview process. One, the interviewer's voice will not be included in the final edit, almost always, sometimes, but probably not. So when you reply, you need to rephrase their questions to make a complete thought. For instance, if an interviewer asks my name, I can't just say Matt Spa. I need to say my name is Matt Spa. This can take a little bit of getting used to, and sometimes it's helpful to work out the whole first sentence. So let's say that I've been asked, what's the most important thing in getting good interviews? I need to have an opening sentence like, for me, the key ingredient to good interviews is, and then blah, blah, blah. I can just keep going on that thought. Sometimes we need to work together on the spot to create that opening sentence. And that's the beauty of using two cameras. With two cameras, if you lose your train of thought mid-sentence or decide you need to rephrase something, you don't have to start the whole thought over. You don't have to nail some perfect take. I can cut from one camera to the other. So camera A is going to get the first 4 sentences, and then we cut out the brain freeze, and then I pick up with camera B that wraps up the whole thought. Which is one more thing worth mentioning. Don't hesitate to make summary statements. If you just use 8 sentences to tell me about your cat, you probably feel like you've covered all the important information. But all of that was off the top of your head. His eyes and his fluffy tail and his sweet meowing, all that is coming into your mind and out your mouth. And that's cool, that's how it's supposed to work. But once that's all there, following up with a single sentence or two that hits those highlights can be really helpful. And it's not uncommon for me to ask somebody to make a summary statement after they've answered a question. Nothing they said was wrong. It's just that I want to have that concise statement so I have some flexibility when editing. You're not wasting anyone's time by doing a little recap to wrap up your answers. Which brings me to the final point, which is your part in the process. For some people, it can be a little unnerving to be interviewed, and I'm guessing that if you're still watching, you're probably one of those people. You're hoping that I have some silver bullet of advice that's going to help you to chill out, but sadly, I don't, except to say that you're in that seat for a reason. You have some knowledge or expertise, or you've been through some experience that gives you a unique perspective. What you have to share has value, and good video tells a story, so if you start to feel self-conscious, focus on that story and its ability to encourage or enlighten or entertain in some way. It really can be a fun process, and it rarely results in permanent injury. I hope this information has been helpful. This video is a bit off the beaten path for my YouTube channel, which primarily focuses on the nuts and bolts of photography, audio, and video production. So if any of those things hold any interest for you, I hope you'll consider subscribing. And for anybody who's wondering, the most important component in good interview content is having really clean audio. So that's my 2 cents on it. I hope this has been helpful, and I do thank you for watching.